everyone. So I'm making this video because I wanted to share my postpartum story with you, and it's probably going to be more than one video. But I found that it helps to listen to other people's stories and other people's stories, so that you know you're not alone, I guess. I am prepared. I have tissues, I have water. So shall we begin? My name is Maria, and I do want to start with a little bit of a background story because I think it's important. Like, we all come from somewhere that leads us to somewhere again. You hear that I'm not in my English is not my first language. I was born and raised in Russia, Moscow, and then I immigrated to Canada all by myself when I was 21 years old. I am 35 right now. I have 2 children, and I'm married. Right? So I want to begin with the pre-story. Is that I think I'm very positive that I had some sort of depression from the very early age. I do remember, as far as I was 5, some like the mood that I was often in quite a low mood, and I would have thoughts thinking that probably my parents are not my real parents, and that maybe I don't deserve their love. And I would constantly feel the need. Well, my parents were separated when I was 1.5, so I lived with my mom only. Well, I lived with my mom, my grandma, and grandpa, but then they passed away. I just lived with my mother. And it was lots of times actually, when I was thinking that I don't deserve my mom's love. I constantly needed her approval, and I was not getting that approval. I constantly needed my dad's approval, and my dad in general, but he was nowhere. No, he wasn't. I wouldn't say he was nowhere to be found, but he would visit once in a couple of years, sometimes depending on his relationship with my mom. So he would either visit us once in half a year, or sometimes once in a year, or once in a couple of years. He would skip my birthdays. I would, every birthday of mine, I would constantly have this, whether he was gonna call me, maybe he won't call me. That's a terrible struggle for a child. I think it's better, like, if you decide, just don't call, don't raise these expectations. Would you agree? Don't have it hanging, like, just end the relation. If you don't want to call your child anymore, just don't call them anymore. That's all. Or, like, don't have them hanging there, whether he's gonna call, not gonna call. It's terrible. Anyway, so that's the backside story. I just want to say that I've constantly been kind of depressed. I was bullied at school, terribly bullied, and the reason was I was too smart and too poor. It happened that my mom was a teacher at one of, like, good schools in Moscow, and the students there, all of them, well, for the big part, were quite from, like, rich families. They would have pants by Gucci, for example. I would not buy my child a pants from Gucci. It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyways, probably that's why I'm not super rich still. Anyways, so I was not fitting in, and at the same time I was way too smart. I was like an A student, so which pissed off a lot of people. My mom would tell me, just don't raise your hand at school, don't try to show them how smart you are. And I would listen to this and still be bullied. But basically, and I was not defended by her, unfortunately. It's a long story. I don't want to go too much into my childhood. Basically, the idea is that I've been in a lower mood since my childhood. Then, when I was 18, my mom suddenly passed away from cancer that I didn't know about, anything about. To make a very long story short, because there are a lot of other things. I have a half sister who was trying to steal my property. Like, I've had so many things happening to this 18 years old teenager, basically. Then I'm surprised I made it through, to be honest. But basically, when I graduated with a red diploma, which is like high distinction, I immigrated to Canada. And since my mom's passed away, I was working all the time and studying at the same time. So I was a very A-type, like this A-type perfectionist that was like, I have to prove now to my mom's internal family, memory that I'm worth her love. Like, she was not alive anymore, but I was still trying to prove her that I'm worth of her love. And hence, I got the red diploma at university. You see, still like something that I'm 35 now. This should pass already, but it didn't. Anyway, so after that, I figured I needed to improve my English, and for that, I decided to go to Canada. I didn't know I was gonna stay for a while, for quite a while. But I just went. I didn't know a single soul in Canada, and to be honest, other than hockey and the weather, like that it's kind of as cold as it is in Russia, I didn't know much about Canada. I didn't know anything, to be honest, and I didn't know a single person. It's not like, oh, I have like fifth cousin from my third, somebody. I didn't know anybody in Canada, not a single soul. I just came to a complete new country to me, and that was a big stress as itself, as you can imagine. And I learned that I can apply for masters with my red diploma from Russia. So the TOEFL came, which is the English as a second language test, academic test that you need to, because many Canadians or Americans would know that, but basically to get accepted into a university, you have to prove that you have, English, which is good enough for academic purposes. So that's a TOEFL exam, which is a huge stress, of course, as well. Anyhow, so I got into masters. I was doing my masters for a couple of years, and I slept for like 4 hours a day, basically, to do that. Then I got into risk management department at one of major Canadian banks. And if you know anything about risk management, it's a huge stressful job. Basically, the idea is that I had loads and loads of stress in my entire life from childhood before I got pregnant. And then I got pregnant. And long story short, I had quite a jerky boss who was particularly triggered by me. But also he was triggered by everybody else in the team as well. But I happened to be a woman, the only woman on the team, a woman who was an immigrant, and I was pregnant. 3 huge triggers for him. So he was bullying me. I was back to bullying. I thought my bullying has ended at school, but it didn't. I actually had it when I was 30, when I was pregnant. I was constantly stressed that I would lose job, and thus I thought I wouldn't be able to get my maternity payments and stuff. Whew. And then the labor comes. I wouldn't say that my labor was particularly stressful. It was stressful because, long story. But basically, now I realize it was fine. It was just induction that we had to wait for. But at that moment, I was thinking I was going to lose my child's life for some reason. And basically, I also had a not so okay pregnancy. I had gestational diabetes, which is okay. It's not a super major complication, but still. I recall how my mom would constantly tell me when I was born, she was so overfilled with love right away. She fell in love with me. That's what she said. And I always wanted to become a mother. And I always thought that I would have this crazy emotion that my mom was telling me about. Oh gosh, I did do makeup for for this video. I don't want to cry. Like, I was expecting to be overwhelmed by love with this new human being. And then Matthew is born, which is my first son, and I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that hit me so hard, because I was like, why don't I feel any love for this little bundle? I don't love him. And in fact, it was like right the second he was born, and my husband was with me, and he was so happy. He fell in love with him. He looked at him and he said, oh my goodness, he looks just like me. He was crying. I cried because of just relief from the whole experience with labor. But I didn't feel anything. It was like emptiness. Not a single emotion. Other than the relief. And I was like, I can't believe I should be like happy. I should finally be happy in my life. And I didn't feel it. And then the breastfeeding thing comes. And let me tell you, I wasn't, as you can imagine, I'm such a perfectionist. And we did go to when I was pregnant, me and my husband would go to this school, I forgot what it's called, but it's basically prenatal school. I think it was 2 days a week for like 4 weeks, or maybe it was once a week, but for 8 weeks, I don't remember. But they would tell us everything about labor. Like, I knew all the stages. I knew how exactly is this happening. Why do you need this information for? You have doctors, you don't need this information. You need information about postpartum depression. I don't think they told us at all about it. I don't think I knew that this thing exists. And they told us about breastfeeding, of course, but it was very basic, like, oh, this is the position, this position, this position, this position, this position. They didn't tell me it was so hell painful. Oh, it shouldn't be painful. You're probably not latching well, right? That's what they tell us. But that's not true. Well, it's not always the truth. So the baby's teeny tiny. I feel nothing. And then these midwives come, or not midwives. I didn't have a midwife. I had like regular OB, but the nurses come. They were very young. They didn't have any children, and they were like, oh, now you should breastfeed. And I'm like, sure, of course I should do that. And I had so many decisions that I made of what kind of mother I'm going to be. I'm going to be an excellent mother, I thought, because I'm excellent in everything I do in my life, because that's how I live my life. I should be excellent. I must be excellent in everything. And I will do everything. And I will never give a bottle to my child, because I thought that no bottles. No formula. It's chemical thing. Don't do formula, only breast milk. That's what I thought. No nannies. I will do everything by myself. No daycares. What I was thinking of, for God's sake. I was even thinking of like home education, because I'm so smart, right? I can teach my children by myself. So anyways, back to breastfeeding. So my baby comes into the world. I feel nothing, absolutely. And I'm just like, I'm teared up, all bloody, all shit stuff. And she gives me my child. And she said, oh, breastfeed her. And I'm like, sure, here you go. And it was so insanely painful. I screamed. And I was like, I can't do this. This is so painful. And I had a huge bruise on my breast around my nipple. And she's like, oh, stupid girl. I'm sorry, I shouldn't. And she just like puts it on her pocket. So basically, in the end of that, I had like huge bruises around my nipples. And then they checked on his what is it called? The tongue thing. It wasn't there. I've had 2 or 3 breastfeeding consultants who told me your latch is fine. You're latching fine. You're probably way too sensitive. So basically, I just had to tolerate this, I guess, because I was so strict on no formula thing. On the 3rd day after my child is born, because of all my problems with breastfeeding, we came to the breastfeeding clinic at my hospital, and they tell us that your child has lost 11% of weight, you're underfeeding him badly, and you gotta think of like providing him with formula, and because of all my hormonal things, my milk didn't come until day 5, so basically I only had cholesterol, and we're like, he doesn't get enough milk, you should pump your milk and give him your own milk, because he's probably way too freaking sleepy, and he was. And secondly, you should also top up with formula. And I was like, formula? There is no way I'm giving him formula. And she looked at me like I was an idiot, and she was like, your child is he was barely, they did the test thing, and he was barely going into the yellowish thing. What is it called? I forgot the word, but you know what I mean, the disease that they put him under the lamp and stuff. And you know what, right now I'm thinking, even if they put him under the lamp, it's fine. So many children go through this. That's fine. I think I went through this when I was a baby. It's okay, but to me it looked like a disaster. And I recall how she was like, okay, I'm giving you this, recipe that you have to. I was an idiot. I don't know. I was so like, all my hormonal thing, my entire body was just into the position that I became a dump. Like I couldn't understand what she was saying. And she was like, you have to top him up with 30 milliliters of either, so right now, a formula, and then when your milk comes in with your own milk every feed. And you have to wake him up every 2.5 to 3 hours. Wake him up with like cold water or whatever you want, but you have to wake him up and feed him, because he's sleeping it's not a good thing. And I was just like, can you say it again? 30 what? Like I just couldn't get it. And she looked at me like I was a total idiot, No, she didn't. She was just like, keep repeating me stuff. But for whatever reason, what I had remembered is that I had to feed him, like top him up 30 milliliters a day, not a feed. So I started topping him up with formula, 30 milliliters a day, which didn't much. But we did like wake him up and stuff, which helped a little bit. He was like minus 8% in a couple of days after that of his birth weight. And he was supposed, I think, was it in a week they're supposed to get back to their birth weight, and he didn't, obviously. And she looked, and then I figured it was supposed to be, somehow I did figure that it's supposed to be like 30 milliliters a feed. But basically what I'm trying to say is that I was like, I couldn't process anything, any information. And this is a person who have like master's degree in economics, okay? So like, I'm smart. I was constantly crying. I couldn't figure myself out, and I was thinking, I'm such a bad mother. And my husband was so sharp. Like, he was the one to provide for Matthew. And I felt they had such a bond, and I didn't. And so, anyhow, so I just want to let you know he was fine. By 2 weeks, he did get his birth weight. And when he was 6 months old, he weighed 8 kilograms, which was basically supposed to be his weight by 1 year old, but not by 6 months. So he was fine, and he is fine, obviously. But at that time, I was just devastated, and I had so many thoughts of I shouldn't have become a mother to begin with. I suck at it, and I 5 years after, I still cry. Sorry about that. 2 weeks postpartum, I realized that there's something wrong with me, that I need help. And I started Googling symptoms. As I said, I didn't know that this thing as postpartum depression exists, but I realized I'm not myself. And I started Googling symptoms. And the first thing that came up is postpartum depression, and this first one of the first links that came up in Google is the postpartum support group at our hospital. And I called them, and they put me immediately into the support group. And I came for the first one. I was late because Matthew was crying like bloody murder. And I was seated and cried with him because I couldn't leave the apartment and finally go to some sort of support group. I was terrified, freaking terrified, for my husband to go back to work. He took 2 weeks off, and I was terrified, like it is gonna be a disaster because I don't know what to do with this baby. I don't love him. He doesn't love me. This baby doesn't feel anything for me. The baby doesn't feel anything for anybody. He doesn't even know he himself exists, okay? But at that time, I thought about this amazing bond with this beautiful child, and I'm gonna be like breastfeeding him, and the angels are going to be flying around, and there's gonna be a rainbow, there's unicorn. It was ridiculous. I don't know why in the world I had all of these thoughts that this is just gonna be such an amazing experience, and I finally will be happy in my life. And I was not. Basically, my husband went back to work. It was fine. I made it through. It was okay. Yes, there were days when, loads of days. Well, the way I was eating my breakfast, for example, is I would have to put my child in a bassinet of the stroller, and I would like literally just like pull in the stroller back and forth and eat at the same time because he was constantly crying. Right now, what I think happened is that he had headaches probably from the yellowish, what is it called? Jaundice, right? Is that word? I forgot. But basically, what I was explained by a medical doctor much later on, unfortunately, is that he had jaundice in the beginning of his life, and he probably had a lot of headache, and that's why he was crying bloody murder all the time, the entire day, And I recall how I would like just constantly going back and forth, and I couldn't figure it out. And the problem, I think, also was I was so into my not emotions, because I was depressed, so I basically didn't really feel many emotions, but I was so into my condition that I couldn't listen to my own intuition. I was Googling all the freaking day. Like whenever my baby would sleep, instead of sleeping, I would Google. I would read about sleep, baby sleep. I would read about breastfeeding. I would read about so many things. And I should have just slept, and recharge. And instead of that, or I would cook him something. I would cook, I would clean, whatever. I didn't sleep enough to even have my brain recharged, I read all possible books and things about, I don't know why. I was trying to be perfect mother. And to be a perfect mother, you should just forget about everything and just listen to your own heart and your own intuition. But my intuition just, and I'm very, like, my intuition is very strong, which I realize right now. But at that time, I just didn't listen to it, and instead I listened to everybody and their dog and books and internet, and I was just failing at everything, or I thought I was failing at everything that I could possibly do. Anyhow, so I did meet amazing girls at the postpartum support group, and I realized I'm not alone. There are other people who go just through that, and quite a few girls told me that they had experienced pain with breastfeeding with their first children, because it's just, some of us are more sensitive than others. And the pain did go away with time, but I want to tell you right away that with my second one, I had experienced pain in my breast again. But I already knew that it was going to go away. I just, cried and breastfeeded and nursed at the same time. And then in a couple of 3 weeks, maybe a couple of weeks, it did again, like numb sort of, and just it's fine. And I'm still breastfeeding him. He's almost 2 years old. The younger one is almost 2 years old. I'm still breastfeeding and I'm enjoying it, actually. We both are enjoying it. And I don't know, even my husband's like, are you going to finish anytime soon? I'm like, I don't know, I kind of like it, actually. Anyways, so they've also referred me to a social worker, which is the first person before you go to a psychiatrist. And don't you realize I was super duper against any antidepressants and any medication, because this is chemical stuff that's going through your breast to your baby, breast milk to your baby, and it's gonna spoil his entire life. I'm exaggerating it, but that's what I was thinking. I was thinking I can't take any medication right now, first of all, and secondly, antidepressants are such a bad thing. It kind of shows that you're a sucker, that you're a failure, then you can't put yourself together. It's like, ridiculous things that I was thinking about antidepressants. I thought it's such a bad thing. Like, tell a person with diabetes that they shouldn't be taking insulin because that means they're a sucker and failure. That's the same logic. There's something wrong with your brain and you're refusing the medicine. This is really this is ridiculous, right? But a lot of us think this way, unfortunately, about medication. And I was refusing the medication, and I started doing everything that I could do to make myself better, because I realized I have postpartum depression. But the medicine. So what was I doing? I started doing lots of things, but one of them I was doing the postpartum support group, which was extremely helpful. It was once a week. I started sleeping more as the baby sleeps, but still I had pushes to read, especially with every single problem that happens with a baby when they're little. Like, oh, he hasn't slept enough. The 4 months sleep crisis. Read. Like 2 a.m. and I'm reading books. When Matthew was around 6.5 years old, I got a nanny come in, like a babysitter come in a couple of times a week so I could sleep. And I thought, and I got a cleaning lady when Matthew was about 4, and she would come every couple of weeks, so that at least I don't feel the need to like mop the floors and and stuff like that. So that was good. But I was still feeling very sorrow in my soul, and I was thinking still that my husband is so excellent with the baby. I'm not. I'm such a bad mother, and I will always be a bad mother, and Matthew doesn't love me, and I don't really feel love for him, and I shouldn't have become a mother, and the best thing would be if I just disappear. So when Matthew was 8 months old, it was a point when he was crying bloody freaking murder, and I couldn't do it anymore. My husband picked him up and went into the room with him, and he probably just wanted to sleep, but I didn't feel it because as I said, I didn't listen to myself. And that's also, I was not an experienced mother yet. And I was sitting there in the living room, listening to how my husband calmed the baby, and they finally both went to sleep. And I was just sobbing. And I remember at that time we lived in a condominium. So it's a 1 bedroom. In the bedroom there was my husband with the baby falling asleep. In the living room, me sitting, and there was a balcony, and we lived on 33rd floor. And I remember how I was sobbing, and I just looked at that balcony, and I thought to myself, I just had this thought going through my mind. That's the answer. That's a very quick answer to all of this. To just end all of this. And I got scared of this thought. I figured I lost my mother at 18 years old. And I'm struggling badly still to this age. It's gonna be forever, right? My child does not deserve not to have a mother. So I must do everything possible to make sure I am alive for him. Even though he doesn't love me, I don't love him, I'm a terrible mother, he still deserves to have one. Even such a terrible mother as I am. I picked up the phone and I called my psychiatrist office and I said I needed an appointment. And they said, oh, we have the next one we have in 3 weeks. I'm like, I need an appointment, please. So she heard me and she said, let me give you a call back. And then she called back and said, can you come at 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. or something? And I'm like, I can come at any time. So on the next day, they probably heard on the phone I was on the edge, and I come over. And thankfully that was the day when the nanny came, I think. Maybe? I don't remember. And I recall how I come over and she looked at me and she opens up the file that she had from the previous psychiatrist which was following me. And she opened it up. Well, she left the hospital like a month before that, and I was saying how I was okay, like I was okay. And now she opens up this file and she reads out loud and she says, Maria, blah, 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 possible severe depression. And I figured, my goodness, I didn't even know I had severe depression. And she says, are you okay with medication? Oh, and I said, yes. Just whatever it takes, give it to me. I want to make sure I'm alive for my child. I don't want to have these scary thoughts anymore. That because, it might just come up, right? And I might just do it. And I must not do it. So she prescribed me, what was the name of it? Cipralex, Cipralex, I think is the way of it. But that's the brand name. I don't remember. There's a huge, long name for the generic. I got it the same day and I started taking it as she prescribed. And somehow, I'm just lucky because I know it takes a while for many people to get the proper medication to work. But for me, just thanks God, it worked basically immediately. On the next day, I felt so much better. And the main symptom that was gone was the crazy intrinsic thoughts that were going through my mind since the day one when Matthew was born. When he was, as I said, I didn't feel any emotion. I already started having these thoughts up until the time when I started taking medication. So basically 8 or 9 months. And these thoughts were just bombarding my mind. I've never experienced it before, and probably I should have figured that there's something wrong. But I mean, I did figure there's something wrong, but I didn't figure how wrong it was, like the extent of it. So basically, it was like bad mother, bad wife, bad, 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 terrible. You suck at it. You should disappear. Your husband will do so much better. He's a true mother for your child. Your husband is a true mother. You're not. And it was just multiplying in a crazy manner. Like, it began with a few thoughts, and then it was just like constantly. It was, it was like, you see the bottle when you have like a body of the bottle and a very narrow neck, and you would have like one thing, and then it doesn't leave because the neck is way so much narrow, and it just keeps jumping from one thing, like one side to the other wall, blah 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 blah. That's how I thought, and it just keeps coming and coming. It doesn't leave. It's basically how I felt. That's the main symptom of my postpartum depression. I realized that it can be different for other people as well, but it was what I felt. So it, like, on the next day after I took my first medication, my first Cipralex pill, I woke up and there is a silence in my head. I'm not gonna say I was happy. It's not a happy pill, It's not like you, it's not like a, weed or something, and you just like keep laughing and be happy and blah blah. It doesn't work that way. It just calms down your brain, and you find, for me, that's the way it worked. That it just calms down. It's not like I became happy on the next day, but at least I was able to function. I was able to think. I was able not to constantly going through all these thoughts in my mind. I woke up and it was Saturday, and me and my husband went for a walk, and we're walking around, and I'm just like walking with him and with a stroller with the baby, and he looks at me and he says, "Maria, you're alive. You are alive." And it became the usual Maria. Maybe not super happy Maria, but at least it was Maria back. And then I went into the period. So I was taking Cipralex for a year and a half. I will pause the video so I can clean my nose and go to washroom, and I will be back to you. Okay. I'm back. So I was taking Cipralex for a year and a half. After throughout this time, I was seeing a therapist. Not right away, but like basically I started seeing a therapist. I did switch a therapist because one didn't work for me really, but it's a long story. I did find a therapist which my friend has recommended. It was more of a talk therapy rather than the CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. That didn't work for me. I had no time for writing my thoughts down and all that homework. I barely had time for myself when I had a baby. So yeah. And my main task with my therapist eventually was that I come off the medication and I shouldn't be having the withdrawal syndrome, or at least I would not have major withdrawal. I was very afraid. I was very scared to get those thoughts back I thought this is gonna kill me. And I was already happy at the time. I was already enjoying not happy. Like, I wouldn't say I was very happy, but I was enjoying myself, generally speaking. And, oh, I forgot to tell you. I also had my own business, and I started it when I was, no, even before I got pregnant, as a side from my full-time job to make sure that I have enough earnings for myself when I have a child. And basically, I didn't really have much leave. After I came back from hospital with my first one, I already was figuring out things with shipments and stuff like that. It was a fashion business. And basically, I was working throughout my entire mat leave, working a lot of nights, still reading about, sleep, baby sleep, and breast, blah, blah, blah. So it's too much. I was putting way too much on myself. And I don't want to say that I didn't have any support, but because my husband was quite supportive. But as I said, I was feeling jealous of it. Like, I was feeling like he's stealing my baby from me. That Matthew loves him and he loves Matthew, and I shouldn't be in between them. Very smart thing that, so I have this woman, and she's very old. We met on the day when my mom passed away. I went to church here in Russia, and I met her. I was crying badly. There was nobody in the church, and only her was there. And she hugged me, and she was very kind to me, and we exchanged phone numbers, basically. I met her again, and then we exchanged phone numbers. And basically, I was talking to her, and Matt was maybe 1 year old or something. And I told her about my feelings. And she said to me something that I was detrimental. I don't know why I didn't think this way. She said, of course he loves your husband. Like, he's a man, he's his father. But you're different. You shouldn't be feeling the same towards you. It's not like mother and father should be equal. It's not like mother and father should be the same feelings for a baby, boy or girl. These are different relationships. You mean everything for him. You're his first woman. You're his universe, goddess. You're his food provider for this time. He has a lot of emotional connection with you. He's probably looking at you, he was about 1 year old, with like admiration. And of course he has lots of loves with his husband, with your husband, with his father, because he's another boy. Like, he's a man he can play with. He can, la la la. But you're different, and you will always be different. And let me tell you that eventually you will realize he loves you so much more than anybody else, even more than himself. And right now, when my boy is 5 years old, it just all makes sense, and I see it so much. And my boy does tell me he loves me more than anybody else. And I'm his mother. I'm a female. I'm his, like, he has so much feelings towards me. And with his dad, they're still best friends. Like, they're best buddies, Well, and with his younger brother now, it's different. And it shouldn't be the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's okay to love your parents differently. But at that time, I was thinking of like, oh, he loves him, but he doesn't love me. That's what depression does to your brain. It plays games with you. These mental games. And when I was so into these games, I was letting them take me out of this world. Anyways, so I didn't have any withdrawal syndrome, thank you. Thanks God. From my Cipralex, I just felt nothing. Like, there was no change, basically, before when I was taking them and when I took them off. I was very slow with taking them off. I was like, went from 10 milligrams to 5 milligrams a day, and then to 5 milligrams every other day, until my family doctor told me, there's probably nothing. Like, 5 milligrams every other day doesn't work. You probably don't need to take it anymore. And I did take it off. Then sometime my Matthew was 3.5 when he was almost 3 when I got pregnant second time, and it was a surprise pregnancy. And I had all these mixed feelings, like, oh, I'm pregnant, I'm so happy. I jumped from joy, and then I'm like, oh gosh, but I have so many plans. It was a surprise, as I said. We always wanted to have a second child. I just wasn't prepared at that specific time. And when Dmitri, which is my second child, was born, it was a completely different story. Well, first of all, I should have said that I've been working and we've been working. So I was working with my therapist, the same one which I was working with when I was in my taking my Cipralex. And then I had a break with her, and because I kind of didn't feel like I needed it, but then to prepare for the second child, because I was so afraid for postpartum depression to be off. The statistics, as you know, the statistics is supportive of that. If you have a postpartum depression with one child, you probably the big number, the big statistics shows that you might most probably will have a depression with your next children, so next pregnancies. And I was so afraid that it will be back. I was terrified for the postpartum depression to be back, that I started working with my therapist, and we as a couple with my husband also started working with a family therapist, because we've been having some difficult times in our marriage too. And it was good. We've been prepared. And when my second child was born, and I did have quite a lot of stress, especially right before. A long story, but basically we at that time we were renting a house, and we were gonna go to live in another country for half a year. And all of a sudden our landlord decided that he's selling the house. He sold the house, and he was playing tricky games with us, and I was having so much stress that there was a time when I was 7 months pregnant, or 7.5, 8 months pregnant, and I lost 2 kilograms in 2 days. That's way too much in general, and that shouldn't be happening for a pregnant woman, okay? What I'm trying to say, I was quite stressed in my life in general. But despite that, all the moves, and we also sued him. Long story short, despite of all that, when Dmitri was born, on that day, I felt the extreme happiness. But it was not overwhelming happiness like my mom described it to me. It was just so cool and chill, and just mindful happiness. I was just looking at this baby, and he was looking at me. I even have that picture of that moment, and I realized it's like cosmos. Do you know what cosmos is? It's like the space, right? It's just the whole universe is passing by me right now in this little blue eyes. And I enjoyed motherhood with Dmitri. I didn't have any postpartum depression, even though I have been prepared, of course, as an A student perfectionist. I've been prepared, and not only did I have all the therapy sessions and stuff, but I've also talked to my psychiatrist, and just in case, I already had my Cipralex ready. So if I had my thoughts back, I knew what to go to do. I was just gonna take Cipralex right away to avoid any of the shit happened with the first one. But it didn't need. I've never taken Cipralex since then. I still have it, actually. Just in case. That's another story. Let me pause it for a moment. Just again. Sorry, I have to clean my nose, and I hate cleaning my nose in front of a public. So, to make a long story short, and then just to summarize all that, let's put it in like a summary. You're not alone. So many women struggle with depression postpartum. That's normal, okay? Secondly, you're the best mother for your children. Let me repeat that. You're the best mother for your children. No one will do a better job than you. You know your children. You know your baby like no one else. And if you don't know how to change a diaper, that's okay. There were children before us who didn't have any diapers because there were no diapers. That's fine. Okay? Ask for help. And if you don't have anybody like I didn't, hire help if you can. If you cannot and you don't have anybody, screw it. Nobody has died yet from dirty shits. Nobody. And you don't need to make everything clean for your baby. It's not necessary. Let me tell you, with my second one, when I was, as I said, quite happy and I was fine, I didn't sanitize my floors. That's what I was doing with my first one. Not only was I vacuum cleaned them, the floors, I've mopped them, and I've sanitized them. I bought this sanitizer thing, the steaming mop. That's how crazy I was. I thought there were infections everywhere. With my second one, I didn't care much. And even if he did touch some dirt and even he put it in the mouth, I was fine with it. He's doing pretty well, let me tell you. So children are okay with that, and in fact, the more infections and the more dirt they're exposed to, the better their immune system works. So ignore all that. Don't worry. Sleep as much as you can. The baby sleeps, you sleep. Even if it's in the middle of the day, all the sleeps, just take all of the necessary time to recharge and recover. The recovery doesn't take 1 month. It takes the full year for your body to recover. You've done an amazing job of bringing this baby to the world. So let your body rest as much as possible. Regarding baby sleep is a terrible topic. Don't listen to those mothers. There exist, of course, those baby who sleep right away perfectly through the night, blah blah blah. First of all, I was surprised to know that many women and maybe many people in internet in general do lie. Okay, I don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're proving something to themselves, but I've learned it. Okay, I've seen I have a friend of mine who's very opinionatedly tells everywhere other moms groups that she's so much against any TV and screens for her babies, and she doesn't let them watch, and blah blah blah, how bad it is. But what I know, that her child eats with cartoons, and whenever she needs time, she puts cartoons on. And when she needs time for her, she does sessions for an hour a day with somebody, that's her job. She just puts a TV screen, and her child just watches cartoons for an hour or two on daily basis. Just saying. And this is an okay girl. She's not a jerk. She's not an idiot. That's her way. So, ignore that and do whatever is right for you. Do whatever you feel right for you and your child. Don't trust people over internet who says that their children just sleeps right away and that's their job. Maybe they do, but it has nothing to do with what kind of mother they are. That's just different babies. They sleep differently. That's fine too. Even my 2 boys are completely 2 different humans. Thirdly, this will pass. They eventually will sleep. Eventually they will not pee in their diapers, eventually they will pee in a toilet, and eventually they will go to school, and eventually they will leave your house. And this will come much sooner than you think it will. Okay, so it's just a period. It's just a period that will pass, and there are going to be other problems eventually, and so on and so forth. It's a journey. Yes, your life will never be the same. Your life has changed. You have become a mother, and that will be forever. Even when your children will be 30 years old, you will still be their mother. Like, you have a new role right now, and you're learning how to be a mother right now, and be very gentle to yourself. It takes time. You didn't become an accountant, you didn't become a teacher, you didn't become a doctor overnight. You did not. Okay? You have taken many steps and many years to become whoever you are in your profession. Give yourself time to become a mother too. You just have his newborn, and feel your intuition. And it's hard when you have postpartum depression, as I said. Help yourself. And medication is good, especially the modern medication like Cipralex, or I think the other one is Zoloft, which I've heard very good feedback about. It's okay. You know, my child, the first one, is fine. You know, they are tested that they are okay for breastfeeding women. Not only that, but they're okay even for pregnant women, especially after, I think it's right now it's been tested for the third semester, trimester onwards. If it's okay for pregnant women, it's okay for babies too. Don't worry about it too much, and trust me, it is much better for your child to have a sane mother who is okay with herself than who is taking medication, than who to have a completely clean mother who doesn't have any medication in, but she is miserable. Let me repeat that. Your baby needs you to be happy for their wellness. So make yourself happy and use any tool to at least not to be depressed, hopefully. Medication is excellent. Therapy is excellent. Hired help, excellent. You know, any help. Don't clean your house. Have a cleaning lady coming in from time to time. Or, as I said, if you don't have resources, forget about it. Ask for help from your friends and family. If you don't have anybody and you can't afford hired help, just ignore it. It's okay. And sleep as much as possible. Take medication, and just realize it's okay. It's also okay if you don't have milk. If you are feeding them with a formula, it doesn't matter. When they're 4 years old, you won't see the difference between the two children who were breastfed versus formula fed. Yes, breast is best, but that's okay if you don't have. It's okay. All is fine, you know? So we're just putting way too much on ourselves and way too much on all of these minute details. You don't need to be perfect, you know, and your feeding doesn't have to be perfect, and it's okay. And the way, you know, it's all fine. It's just a survival mode. I do believe that the first year of baby's life, it's just to survive. Somehow got through and fine. And we did the same with the second one. As I said, we were very happy with him and all that, but he was sleeping terribly, really badly, and there were other things too. And we were just like, it will pass. It's just fine. Yes, there are a few bad nights. That's okay. So yeah, that's that. That's what I wanted to tell you guys, and please let me know if this was useful. And I will make more videos, so please subscribe to my channel, I guess. It will be on different topics, but hope this was helpful to you, and let me know if it can help you anyhow. Reach out and I will give you a hug. And yeah, so yeah, that's that. Hope you enjoyed it. And did you enjoy this? This is my husband's artwork. He's a very talented artist. So, anyways, have a nice day. Try to enjoy the motherhood. It is a good thing. And yeah, find peace. And I love you, and you are loved. And you're going through a challenging time right now, but it will all worth it. Okay? Hugs. Bye.